Okay, that works. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. My name is Steinhage. I'm a director in Medallia Strategy Analytics team. For those of you who don't know Medallia, we make experience software that allows businesses and other organizations to measure and act on the employee and customer experience in real time. Our strategy analytics team is a global team of data scientists and consultants, and we work with Medallia's customers to help them realize the value of their experience investments. So we do that by running projects with them that help them improve their program strategy, their experience management strategy, and then ultimately maximize its ROI. And I'm excited to share some of the approaches that we use with you today. Let's start by talking about today's consumers for a little bit. So today's customer journeys have changed significantly. This was accelerated through technological advances and then really accelerated through the pandemic. Today's customers are prioritizing digital interactions and contactless experiences over in-person interactions. And we expect, and we can pretty much already see, that some of these trends will remain even when in-person interactions become more possible again. And the expectations that customers have are really high. 68% of customers expect Amazon-like buying experiences these days from every vendor they interact with. Where they do interact with your brand across channels, they expect consistent experiences across all of these channels. And 88% say they would leave a brand even after just one bad experience. So what that means is that today's customers expect frictionless, seamless digital experience from the first time they click on an ad, they visit your website, they buy your product, they call customer support, etc., and all of these other touch points in between. And if they don't get that or they don't like the experience, they may leave with the click of a button. So it's no longer enough to just create these seamless, personalized digital experiences, but you actually need to create consistent, seamless, personalized experiences across all of your channels. Now, optimizing experiences and journeys comes at a cost, and sooner or later, someone will ask you to quantify the return on those investments and the return on customer experience. So a couple of things that you may be asked to show are, well, what's the value of customer experience for our business? What is the value of the program that we're running? How does that help us drive revenue? How does it help lower costs? Then, what does that look like for specific channels? So, for example, is customer experience in the digital channel worth more to us than customer experience in store these days? This goes for other touch points as well. And then, what is the revenue uplift, for example, that we could expect if we fix a particular customer pain point? And then lastly, the value of specific website and app features. So before going into all of these questions, I want to take a moment to talk about how to think about quantifying the value of customer experience in general. The value of a great customer experience can be enormous, really, but it can also be really difficult to quantify because customer experience tends to affect different aspects of your company's performance, and they tend to be tracked by different departments across different financial statements, etc. So you really need to think about what are the customer behaviors that are likely to have the greatest impact on your company's financial performance. The easiest way to think about those is to start with the two major pathways to profitability, which are revenue and costs. What customer experience leaders typically track on the revenue side are four things: loyalty and retention, sales or customer spend, then sales tied to referrals, and upsell and cross-sell. When we speak about costs, we have to remember that we live in a time where one angry tweet can really torpedo the value of a brand. So quantifying the impact of a potential bad customer experience is really getting really difficult these days. But what you can do is you can track the cost savings achieved through great customer experiences. And here you would look at the cost to serve or the cost to acquire new customers. So which of these should you track and should you look at? The short answer is it really depends. It depends on who your key stakeholders are and what they care about. So if one of your key stakeholders runs operations and customer support, you'll want to show them that improving the customer experience lowers support costs. We have one customer, a financial services institution, who found that they could save $1 million yearly by increasing digital visits just 1% to 5%. If your stakeholder is a CFO and they question the value of customer experience in general, you'll have to look more broadly and take as many inputs into profitability into account as you can, and then ideally position customer experience as a growth engine. So how do you do that? Let's start with the first one. Typically, the goal of showing the value of customer experience overall is showing the value of your customer experience program. So what you need to show is that customers who are happier, more satisfied, buy more, are more loyal, refer you more, create less costs, etc. Before I go into some of the examples of this, I wanted to check if I need to do a quick Net Promoter Score explainer. I see a quick show of hands who knows what Net Promoter Score is? Okay, not everyone. Let me do a quick explainer. So Net Promoter Score is a key customer experience metric that I'll be talking a lot about today, but any of the approaches that I'll be talking about, you can use with other customer experience metrics like overall satisfaction or overall experience. Net Promoter Score is based on the question, how likely are you to recommend us to your friends and family? This is scored on a scale from 0 to 10. And then customers who gave a 0 to 6 are classified as detractors. So these are the people who didn't have a good experience, probably won't do business with you again, and may even engage in negative word of mouth. Passives had a fine experience, but they may switch to the competition if they get the opportunity. And then loyal promoters are your really loyal customers. So those are the ones that will also sing your praises to other people. The Net Promoter Score is calculated by taking overall the percentage of your promoters, subtracting the percentage of your detractors. You get a number from -100 to +100. That's your NPS score. This Net Promoter Score, one reason why we use this is that it's based on a large body of research that created these categories based on what they observed in different channels and across industries, which is that these different segments behave differently. So they observed how do people behave who respond to this question in a particular way, and found that people who give a 9 to 10 tend to be the most loyal, promote the brand, etc. That's how they came up with these categories. Okay, so when you link NPS to your financials, this is what this could look like. What you see here are results from a retail client, and we looked at how much do promoters, passives, and detractors spend on average in the 6 months after they gave feedback. So people who had a great experience, promoters, are the green bar. You can see that they spend on average $635 in the next 6 months following their experience, which in this case is 34% more than what detractors spend. This was a nice slide with which our champion in that firm could get the buy-in of her executive stakeholders. Really important, the numbers that you see on top of the bars are not just historical spend numbers. They're not descriptive statistics. They're based on a model that controls for a variety of other factors like what did these people spend the year before, or what demographics do they have, etc. So how do you get to such a chart? Let's think about what happens from a customer's perspective. You have a customer, they shop in your online store, they buy something, they give you a piece of feedback, and then some time passes and they have a choice to return to your store and buy something or not. So the things that you need to think about when you want to link that experience to their behavior over a defined period of time are the following. The first one is, like I mentioned, you have to decide what's the financial outcome that I want to measure, and that should be one that your key stakeholders care about and that they trust. The customer behavior that you choose to observe then should be one that is most closely related to that financial outcome. So if we're thinking about transactional businesses, it's typically customer spend or number of return visits. For B2B or subscription businesses, we tend to look at renewals or loyalty or upsell and cross-sell. The next thing to think about is how can we track individual customers? So how can you follow that customer from the first purchase and the feedback to the next time they come back to your store or not? This is a bit easier for subscription businesses and B2B because you typically have an account for each customer where you log everything that they do. For transactional, it happens typically through loyalty cards or through online stores if we're talking about online accounts if we talk about online stores. The next thing to think about is what is the relevant time horizon? So this time window from the first purchase and feedback to the next time you can observe that customer behavior. This varies a lot. If we're thinking about a supermarket, it might just be a couple of days or maybe 2 weeks until the customer comes back. If we're thinking about a fashion retail store, it could be a couple of weeks, it could be a couple of months. For subscription businesses, it's easily a year or 2 in the case of a gym membership or a cell phone subscription, and it could be even 3 to 5 years in the case of B2B. This time window is really important so that you make sure in your analysis that you can actually observe the customer behavior. It's good even for transactional businesses to use at least 1 year's worth of data so that you can control for seasonality, like holiday periods, etc. Let's talk a little bit about segments. Segments are important because they're another factor that can influence your customer behavior, and you want to rule out those alternative explanations. So things like where I live, how much I earn, what age I am, the gender I am, all these things can influence whether I'm going to go back to your business or not. You want to be able to understand the role of these segments so that you can isolate the impact of customer experience on your financials. There's two general ways to do that. The first one is you statistically control for them. I'll talk a bit more about that later. So you use an analysis like a multiple regression analysis that allows you to statistically control for the influence of these other factors. Another option is to split your analyses by segment. Let's say you have the hypothesis that the buying behavior of men and women differs for your business, or that the link between customer experience and financials differs for these two, then it makes sense to split the analyses for that segment. The last thing you need to think about is what data analysis do I use? This will depend a lot on the data that you have available and the things that you need to show. So if you're looking at a pretty well-defined customer segment, you can get quite far with summary statistics. This is also an option to use while you wait for more data to accumulate to do more robust and more comprehensive analyses that we would recommend, which is multiple regression analysis. The advantage of multiple regression analysis is that you can rule out a number of other factors and be sure that the numbers that you're showing are actually due to customer experience. Without getting too technical, let's just take a quick look at how regression methodology does that. Let's think about a customer, Amy. Amy shops in your online store and she has a passive experience. You're able to track her and you know that she spent $174 in the next 6 months. We know a lot of other things about Amy. We know where she lives, what other channels she uses, other demographics, etc. Regression analysis is like finding another customer just like Amy who's different in just one aspect, and that's the experience. If you have a whole data set of customers, it can look something like that, where we take an experience time period in the middle, we predict customer behavior based on that, and we control for their past behavior. For example, their past spending behavior. The output of that is something like the chart that you saw here, where you're able to attribute the differences to customer experience differences. What you can do when you have quantified the value of your segments like this is you can take it one step further and quantify the value of 1 point of NPS, or 1 point of overall experience metric, overall satisfaction metric, whatever it is that you're using in your company. What this allows you to do with a couple of assumptions and additional inputs is to say, what would be the expected uplift, for example, in revenue, if we were to increase NPS by just 1 point on this scale from -100 to +100? These tend to be the numbers that really get you attention. In the case of this customer, it was a revenue uplift of $11 million by just increasing NPS by 1 point. So to sum up that first part, if someone asks you to show the value, the financial value of your customer experience program or customer experience overall, link your key metric to whatever the financial is that they most care about. And if you're then also able to quantify the value of 1 point of NPS, it really drives home that financial opportunity with your stakeholders. Now, once you've done that, the next question typically is, well, what does this look like in different channels? And how does that compare for digital or in-store, for example? The approach can be very similar. So the most straightforward is to also quantify the value of 1 point of NPS separately for your channels. Some customers actually start with that. What that allows you to do is to compare the impact of these within channel experience. How much does the online experience impact online shopping? How much does the in-store experience impact in-store shopping? This allows you to prioritize. So this is from a fashion store where they calculated the value of 1 point of NPS. You see that on the y-axis for 3 of their brands and for digital and in-store channels separately. We also plotted their current NPS, so their current performance, on the x-axis. So the first thing to note here is that digital has a higher return on experience than in-store for this customer. It has a higher value of 1 point of NPS. You can also see that in-store is already doing pretty well in terms of customer experience versus digital that still has some room for improvement. So if you had to prioritize, if you had 100,000 euros to spend, you would be better off spending it on improvements in digital because you would get, what Americans would say, a greater bang for your buck out of that. Similarly, with the brands, this can help you prioritize those investments. So, of course, those are within channel linkages. Customers these days use multiple channels, experience multiple touch points, and it's very reasonable to assume that the experience in one channel may affect their spending in another. Like a bad experience in your online store may put me off shopping in your in-store store as well. We typically don't have perfect data. So in the absence of that, in the absence of being able to perfectly track our customers, know about every experiences, I want to talk about a couple of approaches, how you can estimate the impact of those cross-channel impacts for your business. The most straightforward one is to link bad customer experiences to support costs. For this customer, a large electronics company, we did that and looked at their customer support costs. We found that 45% of people that called had previously tried to self-solve their issues using the website or chat. When we looked into why they had called, 35 to 50% of those issues were self-solvable, so the calls were totally preventable. Overall, the potential cost savings of a better digital self-serve experience were $1.3 to $2.3 million, so making a great case for improving that digital experience. Another example is this drugstore chain that we worked with. Here we actually looked at their in-store feedback, and then we leveraged text analytics to find out what some pain points were. It turned out that the customers that talked about the digital experience in their in-store feedback had a much lower NPS, had a much worse experience. It turned out that there were frequent errors with the app in-store. So customers were getting coupons on rewards into the app and they wanted to use them at checkout. The app wouldn't work, people had to pay full price, and they were angry. We had done a financial linkage for this customer previously, so we know that the average customer in this drugstore was a promoter and how much they spend over the next 30 days. Now it turned out that the average customer that talked about these digital issues was a passive and they spent 8% less. So those digital issues could cost this chain $4.7 million less in in-store spend just because the app didn't work in store. So again, what did we do here? We leveraged those value of the segments that we had quantified, and then we leveraged text analysis to let customers tell us about a cross-channel problem that they didn't know about, and we didn't have to ask them about it because they told us because it was a pain point. And that digital pain point was turning in-store promoters into in-store passives with a hit on their spending. So to sum that up, if someone asks you to show the financial value of customer experience for a particular channel, the most straightforward way is to quantify the value of NPS specifically for that channel, for those within channel interactions. To also look at the cross-channel impacts, start by looking at support costs, and then leverage text analytics to let customers tell you where those cross-channel linkages exists that you might otherwise not know about. This also helps you when someone asks you to quantify the value of fixing a particular pain point. You can compare the customer experience of those who experience that particular pain point versus those who don't, like we did with the customers in the drugstore chain, where some of them had the digital app issues and some of them didn't. Overall, that helps you also prioritize those improvement initiatives. So here, we did that for an e-commerce customer. We looked at different areas where they were thinking about improving the experience, but they had trouble prioritizing it. So we knew the potential experience NPS uplift of each of these. And because we had quantified the volume value of 1 point of NPS, we could also put a dollar value on each of these. So here the recommendation would be to focus on search relevancy because it gets you the greatest return on that investment. Now, of course, these are estimates. These help you prioritize, but it's not actually clear whether you will really realize those numbers. So to actually show the value of an initiative that you ran or a change that you made, the best way is still to do an A/B test if you can. So ideally, that would take the form of an experiment where you can really attribute the change in experience and the change in customer behavior to a change in the business that you made. Here's an example from a department store where they rolled out a pilot test to some of their stores with an improved jewelry section. So they had more products, they had specifically trained staff, and they had a better display. And then they compared this to some control stores that didn't get this upgrade. What they found was that those stores that got the upgrade had higher customer experience, and customers spent on average $38 more when they shopped. This makes a great case for rolling out that upgrade to other stores, and because you're able to put a spend number on it, you allow for estimating the return on that investment. So to sum up that part, when someone asks you to show the financial value of addressing a particular customer pain point, you can start by prioritizing through estimating the expected experience and revenue lift, and then as well by actually showing the impact, ideally through an A/B test. I've talked a lot about spend today. You can do all of these analyses with other metrics like customer churn, for example. If we go back to the slide with the 3 bars, instead of having the spend numbers on them, here we are, instead of having the spend numbers on there, you would have churn probabilities, and the pattern would go the other way around, with the detractors having a higher churn probability than promoters. So you will notice that we've gone from the very broad to more specific things, from the overall experience to specific channels to particular pain points. I want to briefly talk about website and app features. I'm not going to go too much into this because A/B testing and web analytics are really prevalent these days, and they're great tools for continuously improving your website and app. What I do want to mention is that they can be even more powerful when you combine them with online experience metrics. For example, Decibel's digital experience scores automatically scores every online user experience on 5 dimensions. These are frustration, engagement, forms, technical, and navigation. For example, frustration is scored by looking for particular customer behaviors like multi-clicking or erratic scrolling when people can't find something. What this allows you to do is it allows you to identify pain points that aren't related to the particular A/B tests that you're running, so things that you might not necessarily be looking for. And it also allows you to do that in pages that don't have a specific action that you would be looking for, like checkout, which you would score as a success or failure maybe on your A/B test. So I've talked a lot about how much today, and hopefully you're leaving with a good understanding of what you need to think about when you want to quantify the value of your customer experience overall, show the value of your CX program, then specifically the value for particular channels, and the potential revenue uplift of fixing customer pain points. The next question you then need to be ready for are what and why. So why do we have more detractors in the digital channel than in the in-store channel? And what are those pain points that we need to fix? One thing to remember, for example, about A/B testing is that it can't tell you if you're solving the right problem. You may run A/B tests and maybe you see some improvements in conversion rates, but there may be issues on other parts of your site that you don't even know about. Those are things that your customers will tell you if you give them the opportunity to, for example, through that open text feedback or through the online experience metrics, and then you can listen and fix it. I think we have some time, so if anyone has any questions about any of this, I'm happy to take them. Okay, well, if they come to you later, feel free to shoot me an email, or if you're trying to run this in your business and you feel like you need some support, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team.